Hey, bubbies, how you doing? Happy 1 year closer to our inevitable demise. And to celebrate, I'm going to rank every 2021 movie that I've seen. Shut up, Discord.
Bob was always loved and adored. He was everyone's best mate.
M. Night Shyamalan Moose is back, everybody, and he made the worst movie of 2021, hands down. Old. Everything about this movie is cataclysmically abysmal. The story, the acting, the characters, the freaking camera angles. There would be times where a character is talking and the cameraman just falls asleep and stops looking at him. I'm not joking. Story is a bunch of mentally ill people are on an island and they grow old fast, and the big M. Night Shyamalan twist is that it's all a government experiment. I would recommend watching this if you can find it for free, because it is kind of funny. There's this British character that keeps on mentioning Jack Nicholson, even in serious situations. Is this how M. Night's trying to portray mental illness? He also later tries to kill the other characters for little to no reason. I guess M. Night Shyamalan was like, oh, this is what happens in intense movies, so I'll do it here. Anyway, there's pretty much no reason. They're going insane. Can you explain insanity? Didn't think so. I haven't seen The Last Airbender, but this is the worst movie by M. Night Shyamalan that I've seen anyway.
Well, he was kind and generous.
Yes, everything I hate.
Cry Macho is the latest and most likely final film by Clint Westwood, which is a shame, because it's really bad. Just because Splint Northwood directed this movie doesn't mean that he has to act in it, because hearing him talk honestly makes me feel bad for him. Every single word that comes out of his mouth sounds like his vocal cords being ripped apart. And yet, his performance is probably the best out of them all, because everyone else doesn't even try. Especially the child. He's one of the worst actors I've ever seen in mainline production. Despite the low ratings this movie got, I still expected more. Lynn Southwood directed one of my favorite movies of all time. But I guess when you turn 91, you lose the ability to tell a story where things actually happen. This guy wants Cowboy to get his Mexican son and bring him here, but later he learns that it's for devious purposes, but he doesn't care, and he just delivers him anyway, and that's the end. That's everything that happens. Bad movie.
He got the fame, the fortune, he got the girl.
The one you could have had.
Shut up.
Willys Wonderland is the worst movie of 2021. And as of the time I'm recording this, I'm not even done watching all the movies of 2021. I'm just that confident that this is by far the worst one.
Oops.
So basically, they took the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's and made a movie adaptation of it 6 years too late. And at one point, they actually tried to explain the convoluted storyline that was made up by the FNAF community. It's not exactly the same, but it's just as dumb. And the fact that they try to pull this off as dramatic exposition is hilarious.
They discovered that Jerry and his crew had performed a satanic suicide ritual. Instead of surrendering, the killers decided to take their own lives. Those familiar with satanic rituals speculate that the suicide ritual was some sort of a Katra transfer energy, where the memory and consciousness of the living relocate into non-living entities. In this case, the animatronic robots.
Nick Cage has this weird obsession with pinball and soda that gives him strength to fight his battles? I have no idea what's going on in this stupid movie. Nick Cage is an unstoppable monster, so it's not fun at all to see him fight. And he conveniently has no friends or family to speak of, so there's no consequence in this film. Plus, he doesn't say a single line of dialogue in the whole film, which is not what people want in a Nick Cage flick. It's awful, but I want to stop talking about it.
He squandered all that magic power. The thought of it drives me mad.
I'm really sick of Hollywood trying to resurrect Looney Tunes. And this is by far their worst attempt. The entire movie is just a giant flex by Warner Bros. On how many properties they own. This is genred by IMDb as a comedy, but there's no jokes. Just references, with no punchline at all. The plot is a rehash of the first movie's plot, except with a jealous Don Cheadle. And this time, LeBron James has to go to not space. There's no space in Space Jam. Hey look kids, Porky Pig is rapping. We're so hip.
You know, you really should try to get past this.
Oh, heaven knows, I tried.
Not Alone's a weird one. Originally labeled this as the horror movie nobody has ever seen, but since then it's gotten over 100 votes on IMDb, so that's dated. The main actress of the film said that she would love for me to be the first to review this movie, so here we go. It's not very good. I'm sorry. It's kind of hard to say that when I've actually talked to someone who's involved in the movie. The story is a family moves into a haunted house, but it turns out there's not a ghost that's in the house, it's a pregnant alien that's trying to protect her baby. And to be fair, it's very watchable, and for someone's first movie, it's perfectly fine. You'll get better. Don't quit now. I'm gonna be a lot meaner to movies later on the list that are technically better.
But he took it all and I got sick. It really traps my heart.
Thunder Force is a superhero comedy starring female comedians. The story is Melissa McCarthy gets superpowers and there's a bad guy and stuff. She also flosses twice. I wanna die. This movie is so unfunny, I thought Melissa McCarthy wrote it, but apparently a man wrote it. Jeez. But hey, at least it's not boring. I have to think of stuff like that if I have to compare this many movies.
It could have been mine. It should have been mine. I have multiple PhDs.
Infident is a mindless, generic, boring action flick. It's so uninspired that I can't even remember the story, and I'm not gonna look it up. However, I do remember its stupid twist. Apparently, everyone with schizophrenia isn't actually hearing voices. They're just remembering their past lives. Yes, that's their attempt at being clever. There's a lot of obnoxious Hollywood nonsense in the action scenes. There's a scene where the bad guy cuts someone's gut open and rips his thing out of it, and there's no blood at all. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that tries really hard to be as brutal as it can, but the lack of blood is just embarrassing. The acting is subpar, and the whole idea behind it is just really dumb. Not the good kind of dumb, the boring kind of dumb. Next.
Bob went to clown college. College for clowns, please.
I really hate the animated movies by Sony, and The Mitchells vs. the Machines is one of the best examples on why I feel that. The story's predictable, the characters are unlikable, and the humor can be barely serviceable down to embarrassing. Hold on, stop the movie! Doesn't this guy look like that monkey meme from 2013? I didn't edit that. Stop trying to be hip and cool with the kids. It's just embarrassing for everyone. They did this joke twice. Thankfully, the rest of the movie is not this bad, but this scene alone is worse than anything the Emoji Movie has done, which was strangely by the same company. Seems like half of this movie's humor is dedicated to parents that are annoyed with their children that can't handle not having Wi-Fi, while the other half of the humor is dedicated to e-girls on TikTok. Pick a side, douchebag. I kinda thought Sony learned their lesson by now.
It could have been mine. It should have been mine. Surely you agree.
Rule 35. If an horror movie exists, there's a sequel to it. And what's a better horror movie to make a sequel of than Escape Room? This movie goes by way too fast, and I was watching the extended cut. It's a barely feature-length film, but it felt like it was barely 40 minutes. Maybe it's because I watched this movie right after I watched Godfather? I don't know. Everything down to the awful soundtrack, the acting, the pacing gives me severe straight-to-DVD vibes. Thankfully, I just watched this right before reviewing it, because I'm gonna forget everything about this very soon. It also plays the sound effect a couple times, and that's pretty cringe.
I had the animal instinct, but he had those animal cookies.
Why do people say Wish Dragon is an Aladdin ripoff? Is it because a young boy finds a lamp and gets 3 wishes by a wacky creature? Is it because he can't be with the love of his life due to their father being so high in power? Is it because there's a villain that works for his crush's father that eventually betrays him and gets a hold of the lamp? Is it because the Wish Dragon doesn't like being a Wish Dragon and wants to be free? To that I say no. He's a Wish Dragon, not a genie, and he can resurrect a man from the dead despite previously saying it's impossible. The genie can't do that. Seriously, that happens. I guess they forgot.
That should have been mine. Oh, it all should have been mine.
The Marksman is yet another mediocre Liam Neeson flick that plays it too safe. The story is a Mexican woman and her child are on the run from the mafia. The Mexican woman dies, and now her son must be protected by Liam. But wait, now Liam's on the run from the mafia. And get this. He beats them. It's a perfectly tolerable movie. I just completely forgot about it until I looked at the list of movies I saw this year. And for good reason. It's forgettable. There's a potentially decent character dynamic between the main 2 characters that could have made the movie more memorable, but it stays clear from it. And it seems to drag despite not being a long movie.
The fame, the fortune, and the fame!
The Ice Road is yet another mediocre Liam Neeson flick that plays it too safe. The story is Liam Neeson and his mentally challenged brother must go on the Ice Road to deliver a thing. As they try to cross the Ice Road, they realize it's super dangerous and they almost die. But it turns out the people who ordered said thing knew the Ice Road would be dangerous and they wanted them to die. And get this, he beats them. This one has slightly less character than the Marksman, but it's definitely a tiny bit more fun to watch. I don't know which one to put higher, and honestly, every time I think about it, I switch the places. So let's just go with a slightly less boring one.
I should have been bigger than Elvis with the fortune of a king.
When I heard they were casting Woody Harrelson to play Clitoris Ass Titty in Venom Let There Be Carnage, I was like, oh, this could be interesting. That is if they put the tiniest bit of effort into it, and that they did not. They took the mild to moderate amount of out-of-place comedy in the original and cranked it to infinity. The devs over at Sony must have been like, oh, giant morons are the new cool in superhero movies. Let's completely change an already established character. And how Venom acts isn't the only thing that's changed. Strangely enough, his voice is completely different as well. And it's very annoying. The story is a complete rehash of the first one, except now it's loud and obnoxious. The first Venom is absolutely nothing special, but with how generic and lifeless the sequel is, I'm starting to appreciate it more. Okay, positives. At least it's not boring.
Well, you're one of my favorite henchmen, and that's no small thing.
Fatherhood is a comedy drama starring Mr. When I think of comedy dramas, I think of movies like The Bucket List, where it's very depressing, but also charming at the same time. But here, it's a story where Mr. has to cope with his wife dying while also raising his newborn daughter, while having a bunch of unfunny, out-of-place jokes. I originally watched this movie because I was interested in seeing if Mr. can do anything in a movie besides And the answer is yes, he can act. But his bland sense of humor prevents him from being anything above subpar.
You fool! I am not your henchman, you are mine!
Now, all this could be me just being really stupid, but I thought Dune was really boring. I really wanted to like it because people say it's the best movie of the year, and if I didn't like it, then people will make fun of me, but I don't like it! The story is... I don't remember. All the characters are so one-dimensional, I don't care about any of them, and when one of them dies, I'm like, oh, okay. He's dead now. I heard it's very faithful to the book, so maybe that's why people love it? Because the people who read these books already know all about these characters, so they can't tell how underdeveloped they are. I like a movie if it's one of these three things. If it's fun, if it's funny, or if it's emotionally gripping. This is none of those. The only reason I put it this high on the list is because of how amazing the production value is.
Send the henchman to the zucchini for like the 1,000th time.
Luca is definitely one of the more boring Pixar movies I've seen, and I've seen all of them. Despite being a movie about sea monsters, it's not creative in the slightest, and I think this is probably the ugliest Pixar animated movie I've seen in decades. I want to punch Wallace Jr. every time I see him. Just look at his face. I really want to punch it. For an animated kids movie, it's very light on comedy, so you'd think they'd focus more on the story. But no, when the sea monsters accidentally reveal themselves to the world, everyone just accepts them after the generic kids movie speech about acceptance. Despite their entire culture being centered around slaying sea monsters, the movie feels way longer than it is. I mean, nothing happens, or nothing happens that matters anyway. They want a Vespa, so they join a big race or something. But then the whole world realizes they're sea monsters, and then the main character wants to go to school, so he does. I know you could make the plot summary of any movie sound boring depending on how you word it, but it really is that boring. I mean, it's really well made, and I like how Sacha Baron Cohen plays the creepy uncle. They probably didn't think that through. And I do respect it for not having any social media references. It's a major breath of fresh air, but I just hate looking at this guy's face. I really want to punch it.
Oh, I could have had an entourage of A-list movie stars.
Ron's Gone Wrong is an alright animated kids movie, but pretty forgettable in the end. The story's about a robot named Ron, and he goes wrong. Yeah. There's a lot of animated kids movie cliches in this, like the evil corrupt businessman explains precisely why he's so evil and his master plan, while not knowing he's being recorded. This is Locksmith Animation's first movie, and you can think of anything better than that to end a movie with. And of course, since it's a modern kids movie, I only laughed at the unintentionally funny moments, except a couple of visual gags, but it's really more of a smile than anything. Anyway, it's a perfectly fine movie for the younger crowd. I just miss it when animated movies could be for both demographics.
A private jet,
Mansion!
a fleet of golden cars.
Black Widow is a movie that was made for the sole purpose of setting up yet another stupid Disney Plus side series. The only way they could have made a Black Widow movie the slightest bit interesting if it was her as a child, but they only show her backstory in a generic montage with a completely butchered Nirvana song. However, they did introduce new characters, like Bimbo with bad Russian accent, Fat Idiot that's funny because he's fat, and a completely based villain that's whole character revolves around how much he hates women.
Using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
Taskmaster's also in this movie, and he copies his latest ability, that being turning trans. You know, people would probably stop being quote-unquote sexist if Hollywood didn't stop butchering female superheroes as movies. Okay, 15 best female superhero movies, let's go. Number 15, the Powerpuff Girls movie. Is the origin story of a popular animated trio. Supergirl is dated and campy, but still a pioneering cult classic. Oh, if you say so. Tank Girl, what the hell is Tank Girl? Elektra is one of the few action films of its era to be led by a female. That doesn't mean it's good. New Mutants. X-Men The Last Stand. Suicide Squad. Kick-Ass. I mean, the main character isn't a woman, but okay, if you say so. Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey is not better than Kick-Ass. Wonder Woman 1984. That's one of the worst superhero movies of all time. The Suicide Squad. I'll get to that later. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Once again, the main character's a guy, but okay. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, not the Wasp and the Ant-Man. Black Widow. Captain Marvel. Wonder Woman. I mean, I guess that one was fine. Free Guy is a movie where Ryan Reynolds is an NPC in an open-world video game, and he realizes that he's in an open-world video game. Get ready for Fortnite references, because this is the 21st century. There's also a funny joke where an NPC says friendly jester instead of showing a friendly jester because he hasn't been programmed properly. They make sure to go out of their way to explain the joke to the boomers out there. And just before they reuse that same joke again and again. And they also reference that I came in like a wrecking ball meme because this is the 21st century. My god, man, Hollywood is so hip. It was fine.
Will you no harmonization. Thank you.
Godzilla vs. Kong is a movie where Godzilla fights Kong, and they don't kill each other because they're too marketable. The movie had everything I expected. Fun CGI monster violence and unlikable characters with bad MCU humor. I kind of view the movie how I view Pacific Rim. It's fun, but forgettable. It's not even as good as Pacific Rim, so. It's been too long since I've seen it to remember any specific details, which makes me think I probably should have reviewed these right after I watched them and not all at the end of the year.
It could have been mine, it should have been mine, my manifest destiny!
Casino Royale and Skyfall is hardcore action at its finest, but the final film in the Daniel Craig anthology, No Time to Die, seems to take a more serious approach. Which I'm perfectly fine with serious movies, but I just can't take this character seriously. He has a new love of his life every movie, and he never shows any emotion besides that ball torture scene in the first one. Besides being disappointed, it's a perfectly fine movie, I just don't like it very much.
We didn't know much about with his stupid fat and circus full of slackers!
I don't care what Zack Snyder says, there's no way Justice League was originally gonna be 4 hours long. This doesn't feel like a fast-paced movie paced normally, it feels like a normal-paced movie paced way too slow. There's a sizable collection of very drawn-out scenes that don't need to be here, like a woman singing for Aquaman, and the Flash putting a hot dog in his pocket in slow motion, or the famous scene where Batman and the Joker team up, but then Batman wakes up and it was all a dream! Now don't get me wrong, there were a couple scenes they added that I thought was actually pretty cool and fun to watch, and those scenes overall make the movie better, but there's an equal amount of pointless scenes that make the movie worse, so honestly I think it's on par with the original. Okay, maybe a little bit better, because they did get rid of the out-of-place comedy. Also, thanks for the 4:3 aspect ratio, I love seeing less.
It could have been mine, it should have been mine, and the one with the pedigree!
Raya and the Last Dragon is a Disney movie, and I genuinely don't like Disney movies. However, Raya starts off on a good note, has no musical numbers, I fucking hate those. The animation, of course, is excellent, and the action is also pretty good. However, this movie does not like to follow its own rules. Ching Chong stabs Sisu in the heart with a crossbow, and yet she still gets resurrected at the end of the film with dragon magic, despite the fact it was previously established that the dragon magic brings the salt people back, not people who died by other things. So what, every guy that's died in every way possible in the history of anything ever is gonna be resurrected? If there's gonna be a sequel, I'm pretty sure I know what the plot's gonna be. This inconsistency is also shown with Ching Chong's father. Oh, he stabbed me in the leg, it was so bad going without me! But when he gets unsalted, he can walk normally again! What, did they forget? And Sisu's sexiness was very distracting.
I have the looks, I have the brains, but he has animal cracker!
Pig is a nice wholesome little movie of a man that's lost everything except for his pig loses his pig. So he leaves the forest for the first time in over a decade to find her. He meets a lot of people and asks a lot of questions. But at the end of the movie, he finds out that his pig died. This is when I expected the movie to take a John Wick approach, but no. Now since the very last thing he has ever loved has been taken away from him, he can finally mourn the death of his wife. Isolating himself from the world has only made the process of getting over it harder. And during his journey to find his pig, he's made a friend for the first time in years, which just so happens to be Man-Baby from Hereditary. And he was also an old. Ugh. The story in this movie is great, they just don't tell in a very impactful way, in my opinion. Maybe I need to see it again, who knows. Despite only being an hour-and-a-half movie, it felt like it was over 2 hours, so I was pretty bored most of the time. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10.
It should have been mine! Now fly, you fool.
I loved A Quiet Place when it came out, but A Quiet Place Part 2 kind of disappointed me when I saw it in theaters. I thought it was really mediocre. I watched it again when it was free on Paramount Plus, and I liked it a bit more, but it's still only decent. It maintains the atmosphere that made the first Quiet Place so special. But the monsters are complete pussies in this one. Everything that made them seem so unstoppable in the original is changed here for plot conveniences. Like, how well they can hear when an extra is on screen is way better than they can hear when it's one of the main characters, and that's just annoying. I also love how focused the first one was. It was all in one family. But there's hundreds of people in this one, presumably, so there can be more kills. I don't know. I think it should have just ended with the first one. The song is over, so I guess I'll just be silenced now. The Suicide Squad is a fun, but not funny, action movie. Fuck you, Harley. Kill yourself. You're not funny. And if you're watching this and you're getting ready to comment, oh, but Finn McCool, I like Harley, answer me this. Would you like her if she was a man? No, because deep down, you don't like her because she's funny. You like her because she gives you a boner. And since her backstory's been completely butchered in the DCEU, there is no reason to like her anymore. They already screwed it up. There's no going back. So stop putting her in your movies. You're only making them worse. Harley sucks and the DCEU sucks for normalizing what was created to be a side character. But a side character to what? The Joker? Who's that? He doesn't have boobs. It's a shame because the movie could have been a huge step forward for a pathetic attempt to copy Marvel, but they're holding themselves back because they have to include Miss One-Dimensional fan service. God! The movie's pretty good. The Tomorrow War is a movie where people in the future get people from the past to fight the Tomorrow War. I never liked time travel movies, but this one's a lot of fun. The action's frantic, the soundtrack fits the destruction very well. It's a pretty long movie, but I didn't notice. I never got bored. Just don't walk into it expecting something riveting. However, it's kind of pathetic that for the longest time I thought this was going to be the best movie of the year. This silence is making me sad. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is easily a better MCU film than Black Widow, simply because there's less woman. I kinda thought the soundtrack in this film would be a breath of fresh air from the normal garbage Marvel puts in their films since I'm such a sucker for ching-chong music. But no, it's even worse than usual. But this time around, the action's actually very good. It has a surprising lack of CGI compared to the other Marvel films you see, besides the final fight, which is just pure CGI. And of course, it has the typical unfunny MC humor. Specifically this bimbo. I hate her. She's a woman. If you have the uncanny ability to block out of-place humor that interrupts the movie, then I'd recommend it.
It could have been mine, it should have been mine, surely you agree.
Spider-Man No Way Home is not a masterpiece like everyone is saying. There are various flaws that prevent the movie from being perfect. Like, why is Octavius still violent after Spider-Man took control of his arms? Why is Electro no longer a bumbling buffoon? Why are Sandman and Electro here after it's been established that only people that know Spider-Man's secret identity are there? I mean, I guess Spider-Man had his mask off during the I Forgive You scene in Spider-Man 3, so assuming Sandman is a huge fan of the Daily Bugle and knows everyone that works there, sure. But what about Electro? And the typical unfunny MCU humor, but it's a bit toned down here. With all that said, I thought it was a great movie. It has just the right amount of fan service where it doesn't get annoying, and it has quite possibly the best Marvel ending I've ever seen. Good job, guys. Don't keep up the good work. Please stop.
Goodbye, goodbye, good friends, goodbye. 'Cause now it's time to go.